Going live in 3, 2, 1. I think we're there. Hello. What's up, everyone? Yes, we got Jesse Wichmann in the house. Untraded Lady Death. This is, folks, this is the San Diego Comic-Con at home summer sizzler. We've got all the great editions that are coming out, and one of the featured items on there is Jesse's very own swimsuit edition. Now let's pull this up right here. How you doing, Jesse? You doing good today?
I'm doing fantastic. It's a little bit hot here in New York. It's actually just very, very humid, so it's a wet heat, which makes it extra gross. But don't worry, I put on some extra deodorant for you fine folks tonight or today, wherever you are in the world. So I hope everyone is doing well, staying safe. Don't do meth, brandy.
No promises there. There's a lot of work to get done. A lot of work to get done. Hey, fun fact. Check it out. If you guys did not pick it up at the time, you missed it. I'm sorry. Within 20 minutes, this metal edition sold out. Holy cow.
Awesome. I'm sorry it took that long. I'll try harder next time. I
know there might have been a few fat fingers that couldn't get to it right away. But holy cow. Yeah, that was amazing to see that sell out so quickly. But we also, folks, do not fear. You also have some of the other ones that are still available. We've got your nice edition. We've got your naughty edition. We got prints on those as well for the naughty one right there. And then right here, we got a metallic card. So what's cool about these two, these are all both limited to 250 copies, which, let me scroll down, which is pretty incredible. So today we're doing a panel with Jesse Wichmann about creating this image, the swimsuit edition, the Jesse Wichmann swimsuit edition. And so let's get the ball rolling. Enough chit chat. Jesse, what can you tell us about this design?
So it was actually pretty wild. And first, I just want to say thank you to Brian and Coffin Comics, and also to all the sworn brothers and sisters out there for the continued support. I'm just going to show this real quick. This Lady Death swimsuit #1 was actually the very first Lady Death comic that I purchased, and I got this off the newsstand. This was the actual original book that I purchased in 1994. So I was 14 at that time. Like I just started kind of collecting comics in, like 89, 90 when I was 9, 10 years old. So like I'd done Batman and X-Men and, sort of like the standard superhero fare, and then we sort of jumped forward a couple of years and the whole image revolution happened, and that blew my mind, and then being 13, 14 years old and walking in, and so I'm from a very small town, like, single traffic light, you drive past it and you didn't even realize you were there kind of place. And so we just had a very, very small comic shop. It was like literally like a guy sitting in the back of a bookstore with just sort of like a rack next to him, had some new stuff on there. And so walking in and seeing that 13, 14 years old, or say seeing this on the rack at 13 years old, 14 years old, that, that rocked my world. Like, what? Like, you're allowed to do this? Like, that's not against the rules. Like, like, what is this? So I had to have that. And so that started my Lady Death journey for me. And so here we are 26 years later, and I am, being blessed with gracing the covers, not just one, but two, crazy covers. That's, life affirmation. I was 13, 14 years old, and I'm like, this is what I want to do. Drawing comics is what I want to do. That's what I want to do. And so, thank you to everyone for the continued support. So anyway.
Oh, wait, so let me stop you right there. So that's how you learned about Lady Death. How did you learn about Brian Pulido? How did you meet the archfiend, Mr. Pulido?
So, Lady Death went through the 90, chaos, and then that folded in the early 2000s there. And then Brian kind of went on to other endeavors, and I sort of kind of drifted away from Lady Death through all of the, like the times that we shall not talk about era stuff. And, so then when they came back, in like the late 2000s, early 2010s there, I sort of, like I was doing my stuff with Big Dog Inc. and with Zenoscope and Aspen, all of that. And so I sort of like, all right, Lady Death is back. It's with, like the original, the original guy, Brian. And so funnily enough, I actually more or less not really got introduced to Brian by a retailer who was like, I want you to do an exclusive for me. Like, let's do something awesome. I'm like, all right, let's do like Vampirella. I see Lady Death is back. He's like, great, do Lady Death. I'm like, okay, like, who do I talk to about that? And he's like, I don't know. I'm like, okay, well, you set it up and I'll do it. And he's like, okay, yeah, we got to talk to Brian PULIDO. I'm like, okay. And so a few days later, he's like, it's a go. Draw me Lady Death. I'm like, okay, cool. And so I'm like, this seems a little weird. Let me reach out to Brian PULIDO. I didn't know him. I had to like Google his name and find his email address. And like I get an email back saying like, I'm Brian PULIDO and I own Lady Death, and I don't know what any of this is, and no one is approved to do anything. I'm like, oh, okay, sorry, my bad. I'll step back there a little bit. And so click forward a couple of years. Chaos Rules, the volume 1 of like the new story arc, had just gone through Kickstarter. Brian had put out a call for artists. We're looking for artists, apply. Like I was just starting to kind of hit my peak there cover wise. This was like 6 or 7 years ago whenever this started. Mm-hmm. And I had this piece, it's the Chaos Rules. It's actually the Inferno cover. I do not have any of it right here. But I had that just sort of like in the wings waiting to be drawn. And so I'm like, all right, I'm going to do this. I'm going to get after this. Lady Death, that's right in my wheelhouse. Teenage dreams, all, coming to fruition. And so other assignments kept coming along. So I'd put that off to the side, I'd come back and I'd rearrange it, put it off, come back, rearrange it. And so I did that about 6 times. And every time I did it, that piece kept getting crazier and crazier and crazier. And so finally I'm like, all right, I got to stop screwing around with this, and I just have to draw it. So I drew it, showed it to Brian. I'm like, this is me. Yep, there you go. I was like, my name is Jesse. This is what I do. Like, I'd love to draw Lady Death for you sometime. Da, 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 da. He's like, oh yeah, I know who you are. Like, we can't quite use this, but, this is what our next, story campaign is going to be. Can you do, XYZ, which ultimately became the Damnation game cover that I did. I'm like, sure, but I spent a lot of time on this. Do you mind if I get it colored and, make a print, sell it, whatever? He's like, sure, go for it. So we colored it up. Ula Moss did the amazing color job on that. Sent it back to me, and I'm like, hey, just want to let show this to you. And he's like, oh my God, all right, we're gonna put this out to the fans, to the sworn, to the people, and if they demand it, we're gonna use it. And so the rest is history. Yeah,
that one's still selling hot today. It's just like you bring that to cons, you just set that up, and like we get the prints and that. Yep. Also, what's the other story about this Inferno edition?
The other story is that I actually sent 5 of these to the South Pole. I am friends, actually, one of my tattoo client and his wife, or one of my tattoo clients and his wife, another tattoo client. He works for the military in the Air Force. He's a crew chief or something to that effect. And so they fly missions and, cargo and all sorts of stuff all over the world to like the remote locations where there's, bases and different things. And so he routinely goes to the South Pole each year. And so I'm like, hey, can you like maybe do a thing for me? And right at that time, again, a few months prior to that, Brian had put out the call, like, do we know anyone that can do anything crazy? Can we take Lady Death to the South Pole or to space or wherever? So I'm still working on space, but I managed to handle the South Pole. We might be able to get it to the North Pole. That one's a little bit trickier because there's actually not anything there. He would actually just be going there, but working on the South or the North Pole. And I actually have the South Pole edition still sitting here with COVID and everything else that hit. I just haven't had time to send them off, but I still plan to send them out to Brian, get him to sign them, send them to CGC so they can all be sealed up and graded and kept nice and tight and clean. And so we'll see about doing something.
That'd be awesome. So hopefully maybe someone out there has a friend that's buddies with Elon Musk, or Elon Musk. It's So get a hold of Jesse so we can get that out to space.
We're gonna do a thing, I'm gonna start blowing up like the International Space Station people. I'll be like, hey, how can we get this up there? Like take a picture with it next to the window. So if nothing else, I'm just gonna buy a giant ass weather balloon and send it up into space myself.
That's a good idea. That'll definitely get to outer space. All right. So what can you tell us about this design? I see right behind you that you have the sketches, original art right there.
Yep.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yep, we got the line arts there. So when Brian, pitched these ideas to me, came out, he's like, we're doing, swimsuit issue. We'd love you to have be a part of it, do a naughty cover and a nice cover. And that's sort of where things stop with me. For the most part, he just like, we need a cover, or 2 covers. This is the deadline. Can you do it? Yes or no? Do what you do. And so I'm like, yes, absolutely, yes. I have no idea most of the time when I start these what I'm going to even do, but I knew it had to be awesome. That's always sort of like my mandate, is to make it more awesome than the last thing that I did. That's always sort of the driving force that moves me forward. And so because it's swimsuit, it could be a little bit sexier, a little bit softer. It didn't have to be quite, like the intense or like the, more high fantasy stuff that I do. So, and then on top of that, I don't like, coming in, say, too close to what my colleagues are doing, or, what the other artists that work in Lady Death do. I try to separate myself a little bit visually from what everyone else is doing. And so, those are just all sort of my mandates when I approach every cover that I do, is how can I make this, totally more awesome than the last one, blow people's minds? How can I challenge myself, push past my limits, to, outdo what I did last time? And so I had this idea kicking around in my head of, I wanted to do, and actually I didn't even get to do the entirety of the thing. I wanted to do a kind of a mirror image of Lady Death, fire and ice. So I didn't obviously get to do the ice portion of it. And so that just sort of started this snowball of ideas of, putting Lady Death in fire. Like I wanted to have like a fire bikini. And actually, I believe David Harrigan or one of the other artists had done something kind of somewhat similar to that prior. And so I was like, how do I set Lady Death on fire but make it sexy? And so
did a pretty good job. I was going to ask you about that, because it looked like I was going to ask you how you came up with the idea.
That was where I ended up. Like once I settled on the fact that I wouldn't have time to do the fire and the ice thing, I decided that I was going to have a mirror image, because when I put this back to Brian, I'm like, this would be awesome as like a lenticular thing, maybe like your first lenticular, or one of the first lenticulars, so you move it and they switch between the two. And so when I got to it, I'm like, all right, I'm going to have Lady Death sort of like in her bikini or in her wrap, doing her pose. And then I want her clothing to be burning off of her. So then when you get to the nude version, the naughty version, and it's a little bit, if you pull up the naughty one, you can actually see there's black stuff kind of flying off of her. I don't know if you can zoom in.
Okay, yeah.
Like there's all the black speck of like basically her clothes burning off of her. And so, and then that's her money shot right there. Boosh, I want like that huge lava explosion behind her. And again, when I do these things, I have no idea. Like I don't sit at home practicing drawing lava, or feathers, like any of that other stuff. I have no idea how I'm going to do this stuff half the time. And so, finding like reference photos that I can actually draw from, or half the time I have to actually build reference photos because the stuff just doesn't exist. And so, yeah.
So that outfit there with the, is that like leather or is that tape? How do you imagine that?
I would say it's, probably like a vinyl, probably not leather. Usually when I do leather, I try to texture a little bit more. Like if you go back and look at the Inferno, the Inferno cover, when you look at like, say like the like her bust, or her bikini bottom, I actually drew texture and that kind of stuff in there. I'm sort of anti-flat surfaces, like in smooth, big smooth colors. You can see that I put texture and lines and seams and stuff into like almost every, part of everything. I'm not a huge fan of, sort of like the smoothed out, I guess 80s, 90s style, like superhero kind of clothing. So vinyl, maybe something shiny, because I would imagine that's probably what Lady Death would be wearing anyway. Latex, that could be fun.
Sure.
For sure.
I love that little detail of the bones as the belt right there. That was really cool.
Yeah, and then I like to do little things like that throughout all of my covers, where like kind of once I have all of the big stuff handled, because like I can see the pose and I can do all of that. Then I try to create visual information throughout the whole piece. So like when you look at the lava there in the background, that's all flowing down. All those little arcs are pulling your eye down to her, and everything is moving your eyes to her. And when you go to the other one, when the lava's exploding around her, it's actually kind of like encapsulating her. So everything is keeping you looking, even though she's not making eye contact in these two images. Eye contact is another thing that I like to try and do a lot. I try to have the characters engage with you. In this one, I decided to create more of like this moment, and everything's happening around her.
Wow.
And so, yeah.
So what do you, okay, so I was trying to put into words like your style, because whenever I see your art with our books, you just have that unique style, and it almost seems like the way you draw Lady Death or any Morta, anyone, it's just you have like the figures are very like slim and sleek, and like I don't know if wispy is the right word, but that comes to mind. It's kind of almost like I don't know. You can tell it's just Jesse Wichmann right there as soon as you see.
Well, thank you. I look at it as an exaggeration. Like the way that comic books were explained to me, to quote Mark Silvestri, is that comic book proportions, everything that happens to them is an exaggeration of reality. So the people are always a little bit taller, their busts are a little bit fuller, their biceps are a little bit bigger, when you look at like muscle dudes in comic books, like they'd be like walking around, they wouldn't be able to move, like they wouldn't even be able to reach those guns strapped to their back because their arms are so huge.
Yeah.
Yet they can because their limbs are a little bit longer, so those huge muscles are actually in proportion to the size of them. And like realistically, if you actually measured out, Lady Death in the proportions that I put her, she'd probably be like 6 feet tall, which is like way bigger than she's probably actually supposed to be, or your average, kind of woman. And so it's those little things that kind of skirt the edges of reality, but then it also, pushes into fantasy. So it excites your imagination, but it's also something that's, familiar to you.
And then who would you say is like your biggest influence on drawing your style? I saw that you're classically trained artist. Is that?
Yeah, I went to art school. I graduated. I have both a bachelor's in fine art illustration and an associate's in fine art illustration with concentrations in graphic design. So in the late 90s, early 2000s, when I was in, high school and then in college, comic books were still sort of like a, it was a kid's medium, or it was, for the dorks that, sit alone, so for everybody else, it hadn't become mainstream yet. So there was no one really to teach me anything. And even at that time, like Marvel still had their, kind of house artists, and Top Cow, Image, all these other companies, like they still had bullpens with all of their artists. And so if you wanted to become a comic book artist, you basically would go to one of these companies and you'd be like, please let me be like, your coffee bitch, or let me sharpen your pencils and, you'll teach me some stuff. and you just sort of work your way up like as an intern and, work your way in. And so by the time I got out of school, all of that went away. You just had to be good enough. You had to be, ready to go. We want to be able to hire people that will draw comics for us. We don't want to have to train you and do all of that. So it was a combination of being self-taught. The early Image guys, the Image 7 were sort of like my big influences. Jim Lee, Mark Silvestri, Todd McFarlane, and those guys. And then their students. So the Michael Turners, the David Finch, Stephen Platt, so on and so forth, J. Scott Campbell. Those were sort of like my influence map, and so anytime I needed to figure out how do I do X, I'd go and I would look at what they do. I know how to draw, I can create stuff, but how do I apply it to the realm of comic books? Because it's, an exaggeration of reality. I can draw reality, but how do I, make it look like a comic book? And so, yeah, those are a handful of my influence names. So, yeah, the Image guys, their students, and then once I got a little bit older, a little bit wiser, I started looking back beyond them, who influenced them. So you get into Sal Buscema, Arthur Adams, Walt Simonson, so on and so forth. Moving back, Frank Frazetta is another big one for me, big one for everyone. Yeah. I think I answered your question.
Yeah, I did. That's great. Kind of understands where this is coming from, the evolution of Jesse Wichmann. Folks, if you have any questions for Jesse, post them in the comments. We'll pop them up before the end of this. We still got some time here. So, Jesse, as a tattoo artist, how does that translate to the illustrations of the covers that you do? Is there anything that comes from the tattoo side that gives you a unique perspective to your art, or is it just two separate different artistic forms?
For the most part, they're pretty separated. Funnily enough, when it comes, I primarily do, it's all just black and white, high detail, the fantasy illustration when it comes to my comic work. And then for tattoo, it actually draws from my fine art training from college. I do a lot of realism, animals, nature, flowers, all of that kind of stuff. I actually do a very limited amount of tattoo work that involves heavy lines and heavy line work. It almost looks like a painting. And funnily enough, my comic book work is, 99.9% black and white. And then my tattoo work is almost all color, almost always color, or very heavy grayscale if it's not in color. And so they are somewhat separate, but it lends itself a little bit to, kind of like the rock and roll dynamic that I try to, we have, or that I have, because tattoos kick ass, comics kick ass. It's sort of like a natural pairing. And so I just sort of weave back and forth between the two. It has come in kind of most handy, I guess, working on La Muerta. Most of the covers that I've done for that series have been sort of tattoo inspired. They look like tattoos. A few of them actually were tattoos, or in part were tattoos. And a couple of them actually became tattoos after the fact. And so, and when you actually look at the La Muerta stuff, those are a little bit more simplified in the design, the overall line work that I put into them, specifically because I designed them to be like a tattoo, where they're bigger shapes that are going to be then, kind of filled in with color, or filled in with grayscale.
Let's see if I can find one. What is there? So, okay, so obviously the next question is, have you done a Lady Death tattoo? Have you tattooed Lady Death on anyone?
I have. I've done kind of 1.5, 2 Lady Death tattoos. I did one specifically. I actually took the cover that was for, I don't think you have it in your web store, but it's actually the Chase edition cover that I did. It would have been the one you guys most recently is the emerald, metallic emerald color cover, where she's holding the Sith and it's sort of going between her cleavage.
Yes.
I took that one, and the client asked me, he's like, take out the lingerie, kind of go for the more Lady Death and a bikini look, but it's still sort of like that same, the Sith is going through her cleavage. And so I did that in, mostly full color on the back of the client's leg. And then the second one was the client goes, take your Lady Death, do Lady Death as Medusa. And so I did a Lady Death as Medusa portrait on the back of his leg. Whoa,
I'd like to see that one. That sounds awesome. That was a good mashup. I don't think I've seen anyone do that one yet. So
yeah, that was he's like, all right, I really like your Lady Death. And I'm like, yeah, cool. And like, you want me to do Lady Death? He's like, yeah, but like Medusa, because I had also done another Medusa tattoo. It was just normal Medusa. He's like, I really like that one, and I really like this stuff. Put them together. Put it on my leg. I'm like, let's do it.
Let's do it. Let's see. We got someone who agrees with that. Yeah. Taca would love to see that. Let's see if we got any questions out there for you right now, folks.
Yeah. If you go out to my Instagram, it's just if you search my name, Jesse.Wichmann on Instagram, that has the majority of my tattoo work on there, and just kind of stalk through the photos and you'll find it. They both should be out there.
Okay, yeah, we got David Fraught watching. We got December Lace. We got Brandy Sparkles. Hey, got Candace. We got Phil. We got David.
What's happening, everybody? Thanks for joining us tonight. Today.
Today, Stephanie. We got Brian. We got Eric. We got Scott. We got Roger, Phil again, and Kat. So, folks, if you got any questions for the superstar artist Jesse Wichmann, leave them in the comments. I'd like to.
Yep. Let me know how they're at me.
Hear what's on your mind. So, what do you listen to? I saw actually when I was stalking your Facebook page, you did mention that you discovered Pantera and White Zombie, and those are some of your favorite music. What are you currently listening to right now? Do you have anything that you
I rotate through? It'll be when I'm actually designing a cover, doing like all the layout and the preparatory work. Most of the time, I actually work in silence. That is an old animation technique where your brain can only kind of like process so many things at once. And so if you're bombarding it with, music or TV or, other things that are going on around you, it sort of distracts your mind away, either directly or a little, subvertly. And so I actually work in silence when I'm doing that, because it just sort of allows me to kind of laser in on my ideas. And then once I have everything all, nailed down and finalized, and I do a massive, massive amount of pre-game work, kind of preparatory work, because when I actually get to the drawing stage, I don't want to have to think about anything. I want all of it to be there, and so I'm just going, I'm just jamming, because it takes me long enough to actually draw the things. Having to like fool around with, now designing things directly on the page, or I don't want to have to do any of that. So once I'm, into the drawing mode, then I listen to, I have satellite radio. So I'll listen to Octane. I listen to Turbo, which are like the hard rock channels. Sometimes I slip into liquid metal, but that gets me a little too wild up.
Oh yeah.
And, things start getting weird when that happens. I listen to Two Steps from Hell, which is an instrumental group. They do a lot of music for trailers and, kind of like that big, crazy, epic, battle music that's happening. So every brush stroke is storming the gates of Mordor or whatever. And so I listen to that. I listen to EDM, like the electronic stuff. But again, that, gets me a little too crazy, so sometimes I dial that back. But yeah, I think right now the new albums that I've been listening to, Saint Asonia, that's fronted by the former singer from 3 Days Grace. I'm really into the new Starset album, or the newer Starset album. Trials is one of my favorite songs going right now. Trying to think. What else?
That's funny you mentioned Starset, because Dakota works in the warehouse. She went to that concert not too long ago. So before when concerts were going on. That's interesting. Oh, hey, here's a question from Jason. Let's see. I know you've done Baltimore Comic-Con. Would you ever come to Awesomecon in DC?
Possibly. Most of the time when I do conventions, it's somewhat dictated by when they are. Yeah, because I just have a very, very busy schedule between tattooing, doing comics, and then my life stuff, having a family, kids, all of that. And then if conventions are too close together in certain geographic areas, I tend to just pick one over the other, because it's sort of like, most of the people that are going to go to one or the other, are going to come and see me at one. They might not come see me at the other one, sort of a thing. So, yeah, Awesomecon in DC, Awesomecon in DC, Heroes Con down in one of the Carolinas. I've been asked about Dragon Con. So kind of cycling out, trying out some new areas, definitely on the horizon. Trying to get to more places is definitely something that I'm interested in. We just sort of have to see how it goes, play it by ear.
Yeah, Dragon Con, if you've definitely need to go there if you haven't done that one yet. That's always fun.
I've heard it's a very interesting show.
Oh yeah, nonstop. Okay, so what does a day look for Jesse? Since you got the tattooing, you've got your art, you've got the family. What does a normal day look like for you?
I usually get up around 7 o'clock. At that point, I'm getting my son ready. He's 1, so we're getting him up, getting him fed, getting him out the door to go to daycare. Then getting my daughter, she's 9, going on 14. And so, like dragging her out of bed, like she's a, lazy teenager already, getting her up, getting her off to camp or whichever activity she's doing for the day. And so I typically will then come back, between 9 and 10 o'clock. I'll go through and check all my emails and social feeds and respond to messages. And then usually around 10 o'clock, I will 10:30. I will start working on a commission for the day, or any sort of other piece of artwork that someone has commissioned. I usually will work on that for an hour or so, and then I will tackle whatever cover or pinup I'm working on for 2 hours, and then I will go on to work on interiors. I'm actually working on my own personal series right now. And I will work on interiors for 3 to 4 hours, and usually that kind of gets me up to 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Then I have to go pick up my kid, pick up my son, pick up my daughter. My wife comes home. We have dinner. We do family life until 9, 10 o'clock. They all go to bed, and then usually I will prepare stuff for the next day for another few hours, and or play video games or completely slack off. But mostly it's sort of figuring out, all right, this is what's happening tomorrow. I alternate between tattoo and comics. So for me, tattoo has actually been shut down since March.
That's right.
March, everything just, schools are closed. And then within a few days of that, like all tattoo and hair salons and all that's shut down. And so just recently, the beginning of June, actually, they sort of, if you want to go back, you can go back. Here's all these different rules you have to follow. And so I was like, I've got a huge amount of comic book work going on right now. I'm just going to kind of, let that ride for a little bit, put tattoo off. Make sure that everything is actually, going down, staying safe. And so we look like we're, on a good track for that. So I'm going to be starting to reschedule tattoo appointments here in the next few days, and probably start getting back to that in the next week or two.
Are you still at Fast Lane Tattoo? Is that the one that you tattoo?
Yep. Fast Lane Tattoo. It's just a little bit south of Albany, New York, where I live. And so, yeah, and then more or less all the family stuff is the same. And then coming to get tattooed by me is sort of like having a doctor's appointment. Most of them are during the daytime. You'll come in at, 10, 11, 12 o'clock. We're going to, smash on your arm or your body for, 2, 3, 4 hours. I'm going to send you on your way. See you again next month, and then I go about my day.
Yeah, you have some great, when you look at your Instagram page, you got some great examples of the stuff you've done. Your tattoo work is amazing.
Thank you.
So we got a question here from Kat. How do you distress your hands? Going from pens to guns all day must be brutal sometimes.
Yes. A lot of it is on the tattoo side of things. I use a rotary tattoo machine. And actually, if you give me a minute, I have my tattoo machine here. I can pull it out and show it right to you.
Check out the stuff. Jesse Wichmann, limited to 250. Almost sold out, folks. Almost sold out. Jump on it. LatestStore.com. And the metal sold out. So if you're looking for the metal, you can't get that. But we still have the 11 by 17 art prints available. So what do we got here?
So anyway, this is my tattoo machine. So for those of you that have been getting tattooed for a while, you're probably familiar with and used to, you know, like the old big ones, the burn. Those things, it's sort of like tattooing with a high-speed doorbell. You know, like that's the, you know, it's the original way, it's the old way. In the apocalypse, or if I go to jail, I can definitely go back to using that kind of stuff. But the newer style machines, rotary, and this is a pen style, this is basically like drawing with a Sharpie. So there's a cartridge, you know, a little cartridge that clicks in there in the bottom. Power comes out of the back. It's just a lead cord that goes to my power supply. This is very lightweight. You can see it's fairly large, so you know, it fits in my hand. And then I actually wrap it with medical grip tape, so it kind of creates like this big kind of pad in my hand. And then the whole machine is very, very low vibration, and so there's actually not a huge amount of stress on my hand. Whereas with the older style machines, you had your grip, you know, and you have tattoos, so you're probably familiar. And then you have the whole machine body hanging off the back of it. So that was a weight, kind of like a counterweight. So you had to counter that weight, plus the whole thing is moving, plus the person is moving, you know, so it was almost like the combination of all the worst possible situations that goes into permanently marking a human being. And so I jumped on, I've been tattooing for 7 years, and I jumped into that pretty quickly, or rotary style machines pretty quickly. They're very lightweight, super low vibration. They just work, you know, with an old school machine, there's only so much power that goes into them. So if I push that into your body would actually stop the machine, and it would stop. With these rotaries, if I turn that on, I could drill a hole straight through you into the chair.
Oh, I guess that's a good thing.
Yes. And so, like, you know, wrapping your machine that like relieves the stress from your hands. And then the same thing when it comes over, let's see if I have one close to me here. And so, like, this is one of my drawing pencils, and you can see that it's wrapped in the same kind of grip tape. And so it creates a wider grip, and this whole thing is soft and kind of flexible, so it allows me to, you know, squeeze and have a good grip on it, but it's not a, you know, super firm surface, so I'm not actually, you know, creating like that kind of tension in my hand. And then, you know, occasionally if I have a super duper long day where, like, I'm, you know, either like if I'm at a tattoo convention and I'm tattooing for 8, 10, 12 hours, you know, my hand will actually like be swollen up by the next day. Like I can't squeeze it, you know, just from having that vibration. The same thing, drawing for a super, super long amount of time, you know, just holding onto that pencil, you know, even something as simple like, you know, people wearing the face mask, you see the doctors, you know, like, well, the bruises on their faces, you know, just from that thing pushing on their face a little bit for a long period of time, that does create stress. And so I have compression gloves, ibuprofen, ice, like, you know, like I have frozen water bottles in my refrigerator, and so I just hold on to them. You know, I also have the gel ice packs, so it'll just sit on the back of your hand. So, yeah.
How often do you have to do it? Just if it's a hard day, you do that? If it's a long day, or is it just like every day you do that after the?
Yeah, that's pretty much limited. I try to not work that hard. But yeah, for the super long days, like when I'm at a convention, you know, because conventions, a tattoo convention usually will open at like, you know, 11 or 12 in the afternoon, and then they go to midnight. And so you're just tattooing the whole time. You know, like I literally will stop tattooing a person run to go to the bathroom, run past a snack bar to grab a hot dog, run back to my booth, and the next person is waiting for me. And so, yeah, those days are just nonstop. Thankfully, they're not all the time, but when they do happen, it does remind me of how long I've been doing all of this. And like I said, my hands just get like, you're like, ah. And so,
yeah. Got to take care of those precious instruments as long as you can.
Yeah, just doing all those little things like that just sort of helps you cross, like the long run, because everyone is young and dumb in the beginning. They're like, it's not that big of a deal. But every day, all day for years, and then suddenly, like I just turned 40. And so like all my joints are all creaky, and like every time I move, I crack, and yeah.
All right, that's a good tip for folks out there. So a question for Brian. Watching artists draw online, I noticed that most of them seem to really bounce around the piece they're working on. Do you find yourself doing the same? Artist brain wiring?
Typically not. I actually work diagonally most of the time. Anytime you see me moving around on a piece, it's usually, like say like a commission, and especially if I am, streaming it live online where I'm talking to people, it's because I'm paying more attention to the camera almost than I am to the piece. And so, I'm just sort of working around. But even on my stream last night, let's see if I can find it here. I was working on a commission. Show it to you. So this is what I was working on last night. This is going to be a metallic lingerie piece. Basically, I started, it was actually in this corner. I started in the corner and I just started working this way. And when I do, like these guys over here, I actually start in the upper left-hand corner and I work diagonally. Because these are all pencil, my stuff is always pencil, it's never inked. I have to actually work in a way that my hand is not going through that pencil, because otherwise it's just going to smudge the hell out of everything that I've already done and kind of obliterate all of those, fine little details that I put into all of my pieces. So by doing that, like I'll have everything roughed in, and then I just sort of do that finished line art working my way through. And so that also allows me to clear individual sections, and so these bigger things, especially like with this lava burst thing, having to draw all of that little stuff and create all of those little things, all the little stuff splattering forward. And I'm a big proponent of things overlapping in order to create depth. So having to do all of that, if you're jumping around to all different places, you would just lose track of everything, and then you'd get nothing done. So that's at least how I work. And it's worked pretty well for me so far. It kind of keeps me on task and allows me to, naturally move through a piece. And then as I'm moving through, I get that diversity. So it's like, this is a little section of background. Now we're moving on to like, her hair, her arm, or whatever. You're like, oh, now we're in costume. Now we're back to background. So I am still naturally progressing through the page, but I get the diversity in the different things that I'm working on.
Oh, that's awesome. That's so cool. I never even thought about that. All right, folks, we only got a couple more minutes left. This is the San Diego Comic-Con at Home Summer Sizzler event. And we got Jesse Wichmann talking about his edition that he did for the swimsuit edition. Still have some left. They're both limited to $250 for the nice and the naughty.
Sweet. Let's sell it out. My work is not done until those are all sold out. Let me just say, bitches.
I'm surprised they're. So you still have time. We got a long week of. We got a couple more days coming up for these. So once you get off work, jump online, pick it up. Jesse, thank you so much for taking your time. We know that you're a super busy guy with, with the family, the tattoos, the illustrations. Got so much going on. So thank you so much. All the fiends and everyone here at Sworn Nation, appreciate your art. You are a true asset to Coffin Comics. But thank you so much for keep bringing it each time. Like you said, you try to bring it to the next level each time, and it shows. And we love it. The fans love it. The fiends love it. Sworn Nation love it. Anything else you'd like to say, Jesse, before we sign off here?
Oh, I just want to say thank you to everyone. You saw me hold up the coin before. Coin up. You never know when it's going to happen. Oops, upside down. So let me see that in the comments. Or you owe me a beer. I suspect most of you are going to be buying me beers soon. But anyway, thank you so much for coming out today, spending your afternoon, your evening, your day with us. Thank you for buying up the Swimsuit issue, whether it's mine or, you know, some of the other, you know, amazing artists that have graced us, blessed us with their covers. It was actually funny when the, you know, the first, like the Mike Chrome edition came out, you know, and everyone started receiving their books in the mail. They're opening it up and sending, you know, pictures of the interior shot, you know, the burst cover, the burst image. I was like, oh, sweet, you know, it's out there now. People have seen it. Put it up online, you know, not thinking anything of it, you know, just went and exploded, and everyone's like, oh my God, what is this? Why isn't this a cover? You know, and Brian is like, it's coming, like it's gonna happen. I was like, whoops. But so thank you everyone for the support, you know, the encouragement, you know, and that's what I, you know, always tell the fans, the fiends, the sworn, you know, like you guys are the driving force, the driving factor behind, you know, what the publishers do, who they hire, you know. So if you want to see more of me or, you know, more of anybody else, let them know, put it in the comments, you know, do your favorite lists, you know, definitely let them know, because that's, you know, that's sort of like the signal rod, the, you know, the, you know, what
the bat signal. That's how we know.
So, so thank you.
We do listen to you folks, so let us know what you love. And well, thanks again, everybody. This is Jimmy Coffin from Coffin Comics signing off with superstar artist Jesse Wichmann. We'll see you guys later. Thanks, Jesse. Thanks again.
Thank you. Have a great night.
And we are out. Thank you.